Okay, hey, I'm Jada, and I'm going to be refuting Roger Wing. I don't know how to say your last name, but okay. So my opponent's main claims were to decrease in funding for NASA will hurt America's interests. And my opponent's secondary claims are first, NASA's ability to continue its goals of space exploration and research will be hurt. Second, the use of NASA as a tool to reach out to other countries will be less effective. And third, NASA will make less of an impact on local and national economies. Referring back to my opponent's first secondary claim, which states that NASA's ability to continue its goal of space exploration and research will be hurt, I found that though NASA's budget will be cut, many missions continue to serve NASA's purpose. The Obama administration, which proposed deep cuts in the planetary sciences budget the last 2 years, could ask for more money in 2015. The administration remains committed to operating the path-breaking Cassini and Curiosity missions as long as they keep passing rigorous reviews, said Philip Larson, a White House space policy advisor. Although budget cuts will hurt some space exploration at this time, other government, federal funded programs are also being drastically cut as well. For instance, veterans that serve our country expect and are promised pension funds, and they are being drastically cut, and this is from the Washington Post. They state the plan to trim pensions increases for working age military retirees such as Preston is by far the most controversial provision in a bipartisan budget deal approved by Congress and signed last week by President Obama. NASA is very important, but federal budgets all in all are being cut back. NASA's budget in 2013 is inferred to be $16.9 billion, down from $18.4 billion 2 years ago. The House Appropriations Committee has approved a NASA budget of $16.6 billion in the fiscal year of 2014. The Senate Appropriations Committee assumes an end to sequestration and is calling for $18 billion. President Barack Obama has requested $17.7 billion. This request is not much different from the budget 2 years ago, also keeping in mind that the budget still has not been solidified. With that said, with NASA being cut back, they are still being able to continue groundbreaking missions and still have adequate funding. NASA Associate Administrator William Germainer said that the project's private partners have been moving ahead with various projects. The rocket booster's preliminary design review and some avionics testing is complete. The Orion crew capsule has undergone 9 parachute tests and a water recovery simulation, and its heat shield is essentially finished. A test of the capsule remains on target for the next year, and a test flight of the rocket and the capsule is on track for 2017. These are just a few missions that are still being conducted today. Secondly, referring back to my opponent's secondary claim, states that the use of NASA as a tool to reach out to other countries will be less effective. But the problem at hand is not whether NASA budget cuts are leading to our inability to reach out to other countries, but NASA's competitive drive to be the #1 space exploratory program in the world. And without these major funds, they cannot continue to be on top. John Elbon, Vice President and General Manager of Boeing Space Exploration, said he thought about it when he visited last week for the launch of a Russian rocket. Okay. I couldn't help but think while I was there that I was halfway around the world in one of 2 spots, including China, where humans could be launched into space. Neither of those were the United States. So I think it's absolutely critical that we move forward with SLS and Orion so we can recapture that leadership that's rightfully ours. We think if we don't pick up the mantle, there are other countries in the world that are ready to do so. This quote clearly states that if we're not launching certain missions, that other countries will continue to do so. So space exploration is still moving forward, and discoveries are still being discovered, and it is just not from NASA each time for competition purposes. We feel that these missions are urgent, but are they as vital at this point with America's economy down? Lastly, my opponent's last secondary claim states NASA will make less of an impact on the local and national economy. But NASA will continue to make an impact to local and national economy despite these budget cuts. NASA's Associate Administrator William Mayer states, not knowing what the final budget will be even worse than knowing a budget cut is certain. NASA's project often takes 2 years, and a year-to-year budget uncertainty makes planning a challenge. But if we can build this program as sustainable with the funding levels we've got, it doesn't make or break or stop all activity. Then we can make real progress, he says of the Mars missions. Okay, concluding, all in all, the argument is not whether NASA is positively affecting the American economy, and the budget cuts will hinder some discovery. However, many missions and projects are continuing to launch and be discovered. Second, NASA may have to learn to lean on other countries and private companies for aid. And lastly, NASA will continue to make an impact on the national and local economy despite these cuts.
Right, the structural stuff is all fine. On your first point, everything is a counterclaim. There's not really any discussion of the advocate's evidence and reasoning on that particular point. Your counterclaims are pretty well developed. Each of them has some good evidence on it. I thought that the argument about how much money they're getting could be explained a little bit more. Look, they're getting between pretty much 17 and 19 billion dollars, and so that's roughly the same as they had 2 years ago. So this notion that the cuts are substantial is very difficult to understand, and I think you need to contrast that to some of the evidence that the advocate presented so that we can see this a little bit more in context, and that would make that argument a little bit clearer. But then you discuss programs that are ongoing and continuing that are going to produce this kind of progress, and that makes sense. On the second point, it was a little bit confusing because the quote that you use actually makes it sound like we're a bunch of wusses, we've given up space, and it's just the Chinese and Russians who are going to do this. But I can kind of see the point that I think you're trying to make, which is that we're just being NASA-centric when it comes to exploration of space. The truth of the matter is other people are doing this as well, and it's the quote that you have makes it this is the NASA administrator saying, I can't help but feel that we've given up our position on this. But the very next thing is that these places are they're continuing to explore in all of these particular places. I think you probably would have been best without the quote there, because I think it undermines the position that you're talking about, and it was a little bit confusing. And then the economic impact argument, you've got an argument that talks about how important it is to know what the budget is, and that's more important than even getting the cuts. I think that would be a good argument to contrast to some of the information that the advocate presented, but we never hear back about that information, so that's a little problematic. All right, thank you.